Well, welcome back, class. When we last met, Lincoln had been elected president. The Southern states, convinced that an abolitionist who wanted to take away their right to own slaves was now in the White House, decided to secede from the Union, with South Carolina leading the way. Well, today we'll be discussing the Civil War begins. So now let's get to it. After years of tension between the North and the South, the unthinkable finally happened. War. Southern states had seceded, forming their own country called the Confederate States of America. But President Abraham Lincoln wasn't about to let the Union break apart without a fight. In April 1861, after Confederate forces fired on Fort Sumter, Lincoln called for 75,000 volunteers to join the army and put down what he saw as a rebellion. At the time, most Northerners believed this war would be over in no time. Many thought that the well-trained Union Army would crush the South quickly. One confident supporter even bragged, and I quote, "We shall crush out this rebellion as an elephant would trample a mouse." End quote. The government only asked soldiers to enlist for 90 days, assuming that that would be plenty of time to win. But the South wasn't backing down either. They were just as confident that they would be victorious. A Confederate soldier from North Carolina scoffed at the Union Army, saying, and I quote, "Just throw 3 or 4 bombshells among those blue-bellied Yankees, and they'll scatter like sheep." End quote. The South believed that their strong military leaders and fierce spirit would carry them to a fast victory. With flags waving and bands playing, soldiers from both sides marched off to war, expecting glory and a swift triumph. The reality? This war would be anything but quick. It would drag on for 4 brutal years, leaving nearly 620,000 Americans dead, more than any other war in U.S. history. Towns, families, and even the economy would be changed forever. Neither side was truly prepared for the hardship ahead. Imagine you're President Lincoln and you've got a big problem on your hands. Jefferson Davis, the President of the Confederacy, has ordered Southern troops to start taking over federal forts. Now Lincoln has to make a choice. Should he let them? If he does, it might look like he's saying, "Yep, states can just leave the Union whenever they want." But if he fights back, he risks starting a full-blown war. By April 1861, most forts, post offices, and other government buildings in the South were already under Confederate control. The Union only had a few left, including 3 forts off the Florida coast and one very important one, Fort Sumter in South Carolina. This fort wasn't just any fort, it guarded Charleston Harbor, a major port city. The Confederacy didn't want it in Union hands. Well, Lincoln found out that the soldiers at Fort Sumter were running out of food. He had to act fast, but instead of sending troops or weapons, which could make things worse, he told the governor of South Carolina that he was just sending food, nothing else. But the Confederacy wasn't buying it. On April 11, 1861, Southern troops demanded that the fort surrender immediately. Major Robert Anderson, the Union officer in charge, refused. He said he'd only give up if he ran out of food or if the U.S. government told him to. That wasn't good enough for the Confederates. The next morning, on April 12, 1861, Confederate cannons opened fire on Fort Sumter. Boom, boom! Shells rained down for over 34 hours straight. The Union soldiers fought back but soon ran out of ammunition. They had no choice. On April 13, 1861, Anderson and his men surrendered, officially kicking off the Civil War. Even though no one died during the battle, the war itself would become the bloodiest conflict in American history. Like I said earlier, more than 600,000 Americans would lose their lives before it was all over. Next, we'll dive into the Union and the Confederacy, who they were, what they stood for, and how they prepared for war. Until then, remember, the past shaped today, but you shape tomorrow. Make it count. Bye bye. See you next time.